But if Trump is essentially taking tactical advice from the Russian dictator Vladimir Putin about how to hold something that looks like an election but isn't actually an election.
Hey guys, so Rachel Maddow is miraculously still on air, despite her network undergoing many changes, including the cancellation of shows, including a recent rebrand into MS Now, as opposed to MSNBC. And I think the reason why she's still on air, I guess somebody's watching, first of all. That's kind of a scary thought. Anyway, but the second reason is that she's a bad journalist, but she is a pretty good propagandist. So she recently aired just a classic propaganda section about Donald Trump and election interference. So let's hear Rachel Maddow's thoughts on that.
People showed up in big numbers in Austin, Texas today, cheering Texas Democrats as they returned to the state amid a huge Texas fight that has huge national implications. Texas has been at the center of this extraordinary demand by President Trump that Republican-controlled states like Texas should draw new congressional districts in an effort to effectively guarantee Republican control of Congress for years to come. And it really is not just Texas. Vice President JD Vance flew to Indiana last week to put pressure on the Republican governor there to also rig the Indiana maps for the Republicans. Politico reports that the White House has been talking with Republicans in Missouri and New Hampshire and South Carolina and Florida to try to get those states to all rig their congressional maps as well. So that's one thing he's trying, demanding changes to congressional district maps to essentially make it structurally impossible for Democrats to control Congress again, using Republican-controlled states to do it. That's one thing he's trying.
Okay, so this is Maddow's first point, that Republicans have come up with this insidious scheme to just steal our democracy out from under us. But redistricting is something that Democrats and Republicans alike do. I mean, it's also known as gerrymandering. When you don't like it, it's redistricting when you're doing it. And part of the reason why Republicans are so intent about redrawing district lines, I think, is because you have these blue states that are just incredibly gerrymandered. So, for instance, you could look at California, you could look at Illinois, and in the case of California, which, again, is already heavily gerrymandered in favor of Democrats, you have Democratic Governor Gavin Newsom threatening to go ahead and gerrymander it some more if Republicans get their way in Texas. So to pretend that this is just some sort of one-sided thing is absurd. I think Maddow knows that a lot of what she's saying is slanted and not really true. But I also think that Maddow, whether she knows it or not, likes to create fear in her audience. I mean, the reason why people tune into her show, basically, is to hear about how everything sucks and America's going down the toilet and we all need to be afraid and Donald Trump is this big, bad, orange boogeyman. And fear is very powerful and she can sell them things through doing this. Okay, but Rachel Maddow's going to continue. She has two more points in her pocket about how Donald Trump is stealing our democracy.
Here's a second thing he's trying. Trump also appears to be trying to sort of establish a pretext for nullifying or delaying or not paying attention to the results of the midterm elections everywhere next year. He's doing this by demanding a new census, saying the old census shouldn't count. Now, the census and elections might sound like different things, but the census is how we get congressional districts. And if Trump can effectively nullify the existing census by blaming the counting of immigrants or something.
Now, Maddow says immigrant, but this headline says people here illegally. So I think a better term is probably illegal migrant or illegal alien. Now, these illegal aliens shouldn't have much sway over our representative democracy anyway, in theory, but Maddow is very concerned that they might be excluded. Now, why is that? It could be because having this massive imported base of people who are pretty much always going to support Democrats, of people whose kids are very likely to vote Democrat, is good for that party. And so they are very afraid of losing these people. Illegal aliens are currently counted towards congressional district apportionment. And that seems like a big issue, especially because we have millions of them here. They're hard to keep track of. It's hard to get a solid figure. But there was basically no border security during the Biden-Harris administration, and there was enormous incentive to come to the U.S. and to settle here. But anyway, let's hear Maddow out for more of her thoughts on illegal aliens and, the role they should be playing in our elections.
By doing so, he will lay the ground for claiming that all the existing congressional districts in this country, which all only exist because of that census, he's laying the groundwork for claiming that those congressional districts are all somehow bad and they can't be used, and therefore we can't have congressional elections using the congressional districts that we thought we have. So that's two. It's another thing that he's trying. Well, now there's a third. Trump has a new idea for bollocksing up the midterm elections. And it's an idea that he says he got from his best friend, the guy he once said he wanted to be his best friend. On Friday, President Trump held a summit in Alaska with Vladimir Putin. Immediately after that summit, Trump said Putin gave him some advice on how to conduct elections here in our country. Trump said Putin says that people shouldn't be allowed to vote by mail. He says he got that idea from Putin. And so today, Trump says that he will sign an executive order barring Americans nationwide from voting by mail and potentially banning voting machines as well. Now, I would caution you, again, as always, to watch what he actually does here and not just what he says he is going to do. But if Trump is essentially taking tactical advice from the Russian dictator Vladimir Putin about how to hold something that looks like an election but isn't actually an election, as an answer to the existential question for American democracy, this is a little bit on the nose, right?
Okay, Rachel Maddow is speechless at what Trump is doing. She just can't believe her eyes. But I'm sure she's happy that she gets to mention Putin and she gets to allude to Russiagate again because that's her eternal obsession. She's very concerned about Russian election interference. She's not at all concerned, I guess, about Mexican election interference via the millions of illegal migrants in the country. She's not concerned about election interference from people, coming to the U.S. illegally from any other countries either. I wouldn't expect anything else from her, but it is funny. So she's concerned about the fact that illegal aliens won't be able to participate in American democracy. She's concerned about the fact that, we might not have mail-in voting and we might not have voting machines. So the Democratic strategy is to take the bar, any sort of bar that exists for voting, like let's say having a driver's license or having some form of identification, and just kick it down. Make it so that anyone can walk into a voting booth, regardless of whether they are here legally, regardless of their age or how many times they've already voted, and, just go ahead and cast another ballot. It's obviously pretty nonsensical unless you're a Democrat trying to win an election, but the idea that it's reasonable for voters to fulfill certain responsibilities so that they can vote is really not that crazy. And what's being demanded of voters is really not that great. I mean, you have to show up at the booth, you have to prove that you are who you say you are, that you're an American citizen, and then you can vote. So that seems very reasonable to me, but then again, I am not a regular MSNBC viewer.
Here's how historian and journalist Garrett Graff summed up what's at stake. He wrote today, quote, "This is step one on how we lose free and fair elections. It's not that Trump will cancel the midterms. It's just that everyone has to vote in person, and urban downtowns will be filled with ICE checkpoints and intimidating National Guard troops to, quote, double check that only citizens vote."
So again, if you're a citizen, you should have absolutely no fear. I mean, if there were ICE checkpoints, on my way to work, I would not be scared because I have nothing to be scared about. I mean, this guy, I guess, is suggesting that, the National Guard is actually there to intimidate American citizens too, and all this. It's total nonsense, but it's total nonsense to distract from the fact that Democrats want illegal aliens in the country, and that they're fighting any efforts to remove illegal aliens from the country tooth and nail.
Will we retain the right to replace our leaders by election? Joining us now is Garrett Graff, journalist, historian, and author of the brand new book, The Devil Reached Toward the Sky, an oral history of the making and unleashing of the atomic bomb. Mr. Graff, thank you so much for being with us tonight. It's a real pleasure to have you here.
Thanks so much for having me.
Let me ask, first of all, about the sort of premise that I just laid out there in my introduction. I feel like I'm seeing three different lanes, three different tactics by which Trump is trying to call into question the normalcy and to sort of change expectations around the 2026 midterms. Do you think that's fair? Do you disagree?
I absolutely agree. And I think that what you're doing is key to understanding this, which is, I think too often we think of sort of Donald Trump being crazy over here, being crazy over here, and being crazy over here, and that they're not related to some sort of larger plan or effort.
Okay, I'm going to stop this now. We don't need to listen to Garrett Graff suck up to Rachel Maddow for 5 minutes. But this entire section is ridiculous, and the idea that Rachel Maddow or Democrats or liberals are shocked and offended and clutching their pearls at the idea of people calling election results into question is ridiculous. I mean, that's been their tactic for years and years and years. When Donald Trump was first elected in 2016, you had a lot of people come out of the woodwork to say, I don't recognize him as president. He's illegitimate. He's only there because of Russian interference. You have people like Stacey Abrams who, basically refused to concede in Georgia and maintained, that something fishy might have been going on. And so there's just example after example of Democrats doing this sort of thing, even when there's very little evidence to suggest that tampering happened. But for now, at least, it seems like Rachel Maddow is confined to, just complaining on MSNBC or MS Now, and riling up her audience of aging, fearful liberals, which is actually pretty sad. But anyway, what do you think about her concerns? Let me know in the comments section below. Give this video a like, hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.